to the TikToks that we want you to listen to, then we're going to put you in a box. And the box that we're going to put you in is not going to be one that you like. And there are so many people, and I'm sure you guys see this at school. Where there are so many people who, because they're afraid that the world is going to look at them as if they were different, as if they were weird, as if they don't fit in, that they are willing to do what everybody else is doing for one simple sake, so that people don't see them in a light that is negative. What I want to tell you is that, however, when God created you, the God that we believe in as Christians, the God who created you in His image and likeness, He didn't create you so you could be put in a box. He didn't create you so that society can force you to try to fit into a box that you were never meant to fit in. Your identity has nothing to do with how you dress, what you listen to, who you follow, what you like and don't like. You are not the sum of your actions. And this is really important, because the devil will try to convince you that you are nothing more than the sum of your actions. So for instance, it will try to convince one of you that because that person has made many mistakes or is struggling with a specific sin, they'll try to convince that person that there's no hope for you. Why? Because you keep falling into the same mistakes over and over again. The devil will try to convince you that because you keep falling into these same mistakes, that there's no hope for you, that God will never be able to help you, that you will not be forgiven. And he will try to put you into that box of despair. The same devil might take somebody else and say, well, you come from a good home, you come from rich, wealthy parents, you have a good upbringing, people like you, that means you're successful. You have nothing to change, which is also a lie, because that's the box of pride. We were never meant to be put in boxes. Jesus didn't come and die on the cross so that you can be put in a box, so that the world can tell you who you are, or so that the devil can confuse you and make you think that you're something that you're not. The big thing that I want you guys to be able to retain from today's conversation is that if you put yourself in a box, then unfortunately, you make it so much more difficult for you to be able to fulfill what God has planned for you. You know where we see this very clearly? I'll give you two examples. I want you to think of the person of the disciple called Judas and the disciple called Peter. When you really think about it, is there really a huge difference between what Judas did and what Peter did? Think about it for just a second. Judas thought that Jesus was doing something wrong. He didn't think that Jesus was going to end up getting killed. And he thought maybe I can make a little bit of money. And he betrayed Jesus and he got 30 pieces of silver for it. And then when he realized what was going to happen to Jesus, he had so much regret. And he ran to the head of the Jewish leaders and he told them, I made a mistake. Take the money back. And they said, we will not take the money because it is blood money. And he fell into despair, and then he ended up hanging himself. He killed himself. Peter, on the other hand, was told by Jesus, you are going to deny me 3 times before the end of the night. And Peter insisted. And he said, never. I will never deny you. If everyone else leaves you, Jesus, I will not leave. And even though he was told by Jesus exactly what he would do, Peter still ends up denying Jesus. And Peter runs away weeping bitterly. When you think about it, both Peter and Judas committed huge mistakes. They both regretted tremendously the mistakes that they did. But what's the major difference between Judas and Peter? Yes, I see you raising your hand. Go for it.
Peter repented and Judas killed himself.
That's right. But when Peter repented, what did his repentance look like? Remember, after he denied Jesus, he runs off and he hides and he weeps bitterly. But then we find out that he goes back to the disciples and he's with them as they are gathered and praying, so that when Mary Magdalene comes and tells him, Jesus is risen, I have seen him, she finds Peter with the disciples. Peter refused to be put in the box, even though he made the mistake. He refused to be put in a box where that box says despair, hopelessness, failure. He refused. He went back to where he was supposed to be. And that same Peter later becomes the same one that when Jesus rises from the dead and he sees him, he asks him 3 times, Peter, do you love me? Peter, son of Jonah, do you love me? Peter, son of Jonah, do you love me? He asks him 3 times, and for every time that Peter confirms that he loves Jesus, he erases one of the times where he ends up denying him. But this only happened because Peter refused to be put in a box. Judas, on the other hand, Judas allowed himself to be put in a box. He saw himself in the box of the traitor. He saw himself in the box of hopelessness. He saw himself in the box of unforgivable. And because Judas put himself in the box, he lost hope and he took his own life. But let me ask you a very sincere question. If Judas had done like Peter, if Judas had run back to Jesus and told him, Jesus, I messed up, please forgive me, I want to repent, do you think Jesus would have taken him back? 100%. The Jesus that we know, the God that we love, is willing to forgive every sin we commit if we come back to him and tell him, we choose you. We want you more than we want our sin. We want to repent. But because the world that we live in doesn't forgive easily, they put you in a box, and then if you try to upset the world, what does the world do? Have you guys ever heard of something called cancel culture? Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
So cancel culture is the idea of what? If a person goes against what society wants, if the person speaks in a way where they're saying stuff that upsets the majority of people around them, then first they try to silence the person. They try to remove the person's capability of being able to express themselves. And then if they don't manage to silence you, they try to cancel you. And the way that they cancel you is by making sure that nobody listens. They remove your reputation, they try to attack your person, and they do all of this for the intention of what? Of saying, we will put you in the box that we want you in. But as a Christian person, you and I have to get better at recognizing that we don't fit into a box. We're not meant to be put in boxes. So let me give you an example of what this looks like, okay? Let me give you a real example that happened with me just recently. I was speaking to a young person, and my young person came and told me, Abouna, what do you think about, everything that's happening with the LGBT community? What do you think about, homosexuality? What do we do with that? What do you think about transgenderism? What do you think about the fact that there are people who believe in all of these different things? So I told them, if you're asking me what is the church's opinion and what does the Bible have to say about very specific things, no. God only created men and women, and he created them male and female, and there's only 2 genders, and that's what we believe in the church. The person said, oh, okay, so you're transphobic. I said, no, that's a box that I don't belong in. I never said that I hate anyone. I'm saying you asked the question, what does my church believe? What does my faith believe? What did we receive from God? And God is very clear. He is the author of creation. He created us male and female. The person says, okay, but if you say that, that means that you belong in this box. I'm like, no, that's a box that you created. If you want to place me in that box in your own head, you can go ahead and do whatever you want. I can't control what you think. But as far as I'm concerned, I refuse the label that you try to put on me. Because to suggest that I hate someone because I am saying that I believe in something different than you, then unfortunately that's you judging me, not the other way around. But the person got upset. The reason they got upset is because I refused to be put in a box. You are trying to put a label on me and saying that I am this kind of person or that kind of person. I'm not. I'm not. And it's not because I believe in something different than you, then that makes me your enemy. We don't have to be enemies. I can tell you I believe what you're doing is wrong and still love you. Let me give you an example of what this looks like. My dad, growing up, my biological father, for the longest time, he had the very bad habit of smoking cigarettes. And so my dad, who smoked a lot of cigarettes, as my dad, it wasn't right for me as a teenager to tell him, Baba, what you're doing is a sin, you have to stop. And so my priest would tell him, you have to try to stop for the sake of the kids, and My dad tried a few times, it didn't work out, and he continued smoking, and thank God about 10 years ago, he finally stopped. But before that, it was very difficult for him to stop. But now, fast forward, I get married and I have my own kids. Now I have a difficult position. Because now Baba is going to come and visit me in my house because he wants to see his grandchildren. And I don't want my children to be around cigarette smoke. So I had to tell my dad, for the first time, I had to tell him in a very difficult conversation, tell him, Baba, I love you, but I hate the fact that you smoke. You are not what I hate. The cigarettes that you smoke is what I hate. And I don't want my kids to be around cigarettes. But I want them to be around you. Because even though you smoke, I don't see you as a bad person. I want them to get to know their grandfather. I want them to love their grandfather. I just don't want them to be around this thing. And my dad received it with so much love, and he completely understood, and he refused to smoke around my kids. But here's my question to you guys. If I tell my dad, I hate the fact that you smoke, I think that smoking is a sin, does that mean I hate my father?
No.
Of course not. Of course not. Because I can hate what's wrong without hating the person who's doing the wrong. Imagine if we all treated each other in a way where because you did something I hate, that means I hate you. You know, we're all going to hate each other, khalas. We're all going to end up judging each other, pointing the finger at each other, calling each other names, putting each other in boxes. I think the big message that I want to tell you guys, and that I want to share with you, is that, Habibi, your identity is not the box or the label that the world tries to put you in. Your identity is that you are the son or the daughter of Christ. Now, you could be the son or the daughter of Christ while still making mistakes. We all make mistakes. As a matter of fact, in one of the prayers of the church, the Litany of the Departed, we say that our life would be, there would still be sin in our life, even if our life was just a single day. We know that we're always going to mess up. We know that there's always going to be something that we need to repent from. But it's not because I have sinned that makes me no longer a child of God. My identity is that I am his son or I am his daughter. My identity is not that I am a smoker or a drug addict or that I am, a homosexual or a transgender or all of these are labels, all of these are boxes. We don't care for these things. Those labels are what the world tries to use to make sure that we fall into despair. We don't care about those labels. The only identity that we care about is that we belong to Christ as his sons and daughters. So even if one day the world tries to put you in a box, say, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in being in a box. My only identity is found in the fact that I belong to God. If you can believe that, I promise you, you'll have so much more freedom in your life rather than feeling like you have to be weighed down by all of the different pressures that are put around you. God bless you, Habibi, and I really hope that whether it be at school or with your friends or all the pressure that you feel because of everything that surrounds you, I really hope that you find freedom in knowing that you belong to Jesus Christ. Did you guys have any questions that you wanted to prepare or that you guys want to talk about today in any way, Habibi?
Thank you, Abouna. Yes, we have some questions here. Thank you very much for this.
I have one question. Have you had any mistakes during, recently in your priesthood journey?
Have I had what, Habibi?
Have you had any mistakes during your recent priesthood journey, or?
Have I made any mistakes?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah. Oh
yeah. Oh yes, Habibi, 100%. 100%. If the question is have I made any mistakes? I mean, you have to remember that even as priests, or even as bishops, or even our father, the patriarch, Baba Tawadros, every single one of us has a father of confession for a reason. The reason that everybody, from the youngest child all the way to the Holy Pope, all of us have to confess. And the confession happens regularly. I have, personally, a scheduled confession with my father of confession every single month. And I tell him about all the mistakes that I make and all the things that I want to repent from so that God can help me become closer and closer to him. So yes, Habibi, definitely, I make mistakes. If you want, I can make a list and share it with you.
No, that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
I have a question about, like, you said that sometimes the devil can, like, tempt you into grouping you into, like, a box, saying that there's no hope and, like, it's hopeless. During those times, it's, like, a little bit harder to connect with God, because that, like, with that being on your mind, like, 24/7, it's, like, really hard to even think in general. Like, what would you advise to, like, break out of that habit, or like stop it, or like if you're even in the third person, or if you know someone going through that, how can you advise that person anyway?
So this is why having a good set of friends around you is really, really, really helpful, because unfortunately you guys belong to a generation where everybody thinks that they're friends, but in reality, you know, how many people would actually be there for you if you're going through something really bad, right? You think you have tens and like hundreds of even thousands of friends. Like on Facebook, it says that I have 4,000 friends. I don't have 4,000 friends. There's no way I have 4,000 friends. Now there might be 4,000 people who know me. That doesn't make them my friends. But here I'm talking about like the 2 or 3 or 4 people that are super, 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 super close to you. When you have good friends around you and they see that you're down and you're struggling, you can trust them. You can tell them, listen, I'm not doing well and I need prayer and I need you guys to help me and I'm not motivated and I don't want to go to church and I don't want to go confess and I don't feel like getting out of bed. When you really feel that you're struggling like this, it's those friends that are going to help you. You know what this reminds me of? Do you remember the story of the paralytic who couldn't get to Jesus because he was paralyzed? If it was not for his friends, he would have never been healed. If it was not for his friends who found a solution to let him down from the roof, he would have never been able to have the gift and the miracle that Christ gave him. We need friends who are willing to do that for us. So surround yourself with people who have the same Christian values as you. Surround yourself with people who are going to inspire you to become better and better than who you are right now. And the other person I'm going to tell you that's really important are the people who guide you spiritually. And this includes your servants and your father confession. Because your father confession and your servants, they're not only looking out for you socially, they're very concerned about you spiritually. So when you have a close servant who is mentoring you and asking about you, and you build a relationship, even if they're an uncle or a aunt who are older than you. But if it's somebody who's older that you know you can trust, and you can't really tell something to your parents because you're worried or you have a concern, you just need to ask an adult, sometimes having that father confession or that servant is a huge help. So whenever you feel like you're stuck in the box, it's those people, your closest good friends, your servants and your father confession, who can help pull you out. Now obviously, if you have a good and healthy relationship with your parents, like they're number one. They're number one. If you have a good and healthy relationship. But on top of that, your friends, your servants, your father confession, I think are probably the best solution for those situations. Good question. Thank you for asking, Habib.
Okay, this one first. Are there any other examples in the Bible of somebody like not wanting to be placed in a box? Like,
oh yes, absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys remember the story of David the prophet and the king, you know, at some point in his life he unfortunately made a huge mistake. And that huge mistake ended up causing him to fall into the sin of murder as well as in the sin of adultery. And then God wanted to He wanted to wake him up. So he sent him the prophet. And so when Nathan the prophet went to David, he told David, And I don't know if you guys remember the story. If you don't, maybe we can ask the servants to summarize it for you and to give it to you. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's one that shows that even the best of people can make huge mistakes. He sent him Nathan, and Nathan basically told him, David, you've committed a huge sin in front of God. David could have said, no, that's not true, I'm innocent, it's not right, you don't know what you're talking about, you can't speak to me like that, I'm the king. He could have found 1,000 different things. But David refused to be put in the box of pride. David refused to be left in the box of, I'm a murderer. Refused to be left in the box of, I'm an adulterer. Instead, he said, I belong to God, I have sinned in front of God, and he asked God for forgiveness. And it's that story that led David to write what? Psalm 50. Have mercy upon me, O God, according to your loving kindness. According to the multitude of your tender mercies, blot out my transgressions. Create in me a clean heart. Right? He says all of these things because he finally repents. David refuses to be left in the box of sin. So he fights in order not to be left in that box. We see many of these different beautiful stories of people who make a huge difference and they refuse. Even the prodigal son. Do you guys remember the story of the prodigal son about how he messes up so big time?
Yeah.
And then he finally comes to his senses, and he said, I will arise and I will go to my father. And I will tell him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. He gets out of the box. He refuses to be left in the box of despair, in the box of hopelessness, in the box of sin. He repents and he goes back to his father. Those are the examples we should have in the front of us, Habib.
Abouna, there is a question from one of the servants on behalf of the kids.
Abouna, it's kind of just wanted your input on this kind of case scenario. In a high school setting, people feel like friends. So let's consider two friends. One of them is bullying the other for not supporting the LGBTQ community and accusing him for hatred speech. Let's call him Chris. Chris on the other side is frustrated and confused. He has two options. Either to defend his belief and keeps announcing that homosexuality is a sin, or keep silent and accept all the bullying from the other person and be the loser in front of everyone. We've seen this scenario a lot, and we wanted your advice on the wise approach to face these situations.
So I want to encourage you guys to be a generation of young men and women who are not afraid to stand for the truth. However, the number one thing right now that the devil is trying to attack as much as possible is the truth. He's trying to make everyone believe that there is no such thing as truth and that everybody can have their own definitions for everything. I mean, if one of you came up to me right now and you told me, Abouna, your galabeya is pink, I'm going to sit there and tell you, Habibi, I think you should go get your eyes checked. My galabeya is not pink. If you come and tell me, yeah, I know, Abouna, I know you see it as black, but I see it as pink, therefore my truth is that it's pink. Habibi, you can convince yourself of whatever you want. At the end of the day, the galabeya is still black. The truth is the truth, whether we like it or not. And whether or not we believe, or we want to believe that there's another option for the color of the galabeya, is a problem that you have to deal with personally. But we as people who are Christians, we have to stand for the truth. And sometimes standing for the truth means that unfortunately, we might lose a few friends, we might lose our jobs. There are some people who, if they speak the truth, it might cost them a relationship, it might cost them their career, it might cost them something very serious. But when we trust in God, we tell him, Lord, I'm going to speak the truth and I'm going to speak it as lovingly as possible. So if we take the example of Chris and his friend, I would encourage Chris to tell him, Chris, Habibi, if someone is trying to convince you and tell you, I will only treat you with respect if you accept to agree with me on the lie that I believe in, then this is not even a person that you should be friends with. Think about this for just a second. If a person tells you, I'll only treat you with respect and stop bullying you if you give me what I want. What is that called? That's blackmail. That's blackmail. Why would you want to be friends with a person who says, give me what I want or else? But this person is being violent towards you. So already there is something very wrong there. Already there is something there that is not worthy of trying to save as far as a friendship, because this person doesn't see you as a friend. This person only sees you as someone that they can use. And on top of that, you're being told, deny the truth. Remember, you are not expected to walk down the hallways of your classes and to scream, I think homosexuals are sinners. That's ridiculous. That's not what the gospel tells you to do. Jesus doesn't want you guys running around and pointing at people and saying, you're a sinner and you're a sinner and you're a sinner. Jesus never did that. When Jesus first met Zacchaeus, he didn't tell Zacchaeus, oh Zacchaeus, you're a chief tax collector, you're a horrible man. When Jesus met with the Samaritan woman, he didn't tell her, oh, you're a woman who has multiple husbands, you're an adulterer. When he met with Matthew, he didn't tell him, you sold out your country and you became a tax collector and you're a horrible person. He didn't do that. Jesus was not judgmental to people. But Jesus, when asked what's right and what's wrong, he did not hesitate to say, this is right, this is wrong, we should stop sinning. Even with the woman who was found in adultery, he told her, I don't condemn you, go and sin no more, declaring her sin to be sin. So I would encourage Chris in this situation. I know it's a hypothetical situation, but I would encourage Chris to tell him, Chris, Habibi, find the courage to trust in God, to speak the truth, and to tell this person who's telling you, I will not be bullied into going against my faith, and if that's what you're asking me to do, then clearly you and I don't have the same values, and we don't have to have this conversation anymore, and to give distance between them and that person. So forgive me, I don't know the name of the servant who asked the question, but I hope that gives some insight.
I don't need it.
Other questions?
We have another question.
Salam Abouna. So I'll ask on behalf of them. During your talk, you mentioned having a healthy relationship with our parents. So for any relationship, there's two sides. Like there's my parents, there's the kids. Or I'll speak on behalf of them. So myself. So what's my role as a youth or a teenager in that?
I'm so sorry, I can't.
So I'm talking.
What you were saying, forgive me.
Sorry, so I'll repeat. I'm talking about during your talk you mentioned a healthy relationship with our parents. So what's my role as a youth or a teenager in order to maintain or have that healthy relationship with my parents? I'm not going to talk as my parents' role, but what should I do? Or there is anything that any initiative should I take in order to start that relationship with my parents?
Yeah. So I think, Habibi, you having a healthy relationship with your parents is probably one of the most important things right now for your age. And I know it's very difficult to do that because you're not used to it sometimes, but I have to encourage you and tell you that the people who are closest to their parents and who share with their parents the stuff that they're going through, they have a much better success rate in being, healthy at the level of their mind, their body, and their spirit. And the number one thing that gets in the way of a healthy relationship with your parents are these stupid things here. You guys know what I'm holding here? These things here are absolutely horrible. Why? Because the moment you get home, you don't want to speak to anybody, you go sit on the couch or you go lock yourself up in your room and you spend the next 5 or 6 hours scrolling aimlessly through hours and hours of garbage on this stuff. And then somebody's telling you, تعالى كل معانا. I don't want to. طب تعالى اقعد معايا, tell me how your day was, مش عايز اكلمك. طيب come and make me feel كده ان احنا عايشين مع بعض, ان انت بني ادم كده معايا. Nothing. مش هينفع حبايبي. The number one thing, the first step that you can take is limit your access to this and spend more time with people. Instead of staring at a screen of a recorded video of a human being, go spend time with a real human being. Set this phone aside And if you can start with something small, start with something very small. 1 hour a day. 1 hour a day, from the time you come home, go spend 20 minutes with your siblings, 20 minutes with mom, 20 minutes with dad. That's your 60 minutes. Start with that. Talk about something you have in common. Share a concern that you have. Ask them about their day. Connect with them. Tell your dad, Baba, I want us to go out and have, a meal, just me and you. Tell your mom, I want to go for a walk with you outside. Tell your siblings, let's play a board game instead of just aimlessly scrolling on TikTok. If you could do this, you will build relationships in your home. But begin with something small. If you begin with that, I promise you, you'll begin to see a relationship develop over time.
It's an amazing advice, Abouna, because sometimes parents are like, they think that we are different cultures, so we don't understand them. But we really need them as they need us, so thank you, Abouna.
Akid.
Hello, I know you've seen me twice before. I have a third question. What do you do in a situation that someone's placed you in a box and want to get out of it?
So I think I answered that question right before when I was speaking to your friend who's sitting next to you. I think sometimes the best solution is for us to have, a good set of friends or servants or a father of confession who can help give us the advice that we need to make sure that we come out of those boxes that people are trying to put on us, so that if you have a good support group in our community, in our church, or with our family, that will be something that can help us get out of those boxes that people try to put us in.
Abouna, one of the things is loneliness and despair. Those things are very tough on the teenagers, like feeling alone or despair if I did something wrong and nobody accepts me. So we need your advice, Abouna.
So there's no reason for us to feel lonely, especially if we have family and friends in the community. The problem is not so much that we are alone. The problem is that we're not connecting with people. So remember, loneliness is not just the idea of being alone in life. It's not having any connections with anyone. So the best way for you to be able to battle loneliness is for you to allow yourself to connect. I know it's not something that comes easily to everyone, but if you're not willing to speak to people, get to know people, pick up the phone and ask about someone, if you're not willing to call a servant and say, hey, I need to talk, if you're not willing to take an appointment with your father of confession and say, Abouna, I need to get something off my chest, if you're not willing to sit down with your parents and say, there's something that's been bothering me, all of these things, if you're not willing to do them, you're constantly going to be struggling with, I'm so sorry, there's kids screaming right outside my office and that's why there's so much noise. I apologize. If you're not willing to connect in that way, for sure you're going to struggle with loneliness. And as far as despair goes, Habari, why would you despair? Think about this for just a second. Do you seriously believe that the love that God has for you is not enough to be able to help you get out of any trouble that you're in? The God who is willing to come and die on the cross to die and save you. The God who is willing to rise from the dead for your sake. You seriously think that any problem that you face is bigger or stronger than your God? There's no reason to fall into despair. The devil tries to convince us that our God is weak and that our problem or our sin is bigger than God. Don't believe the lie, Habaib. Don't believe the lie. Your God is much bigger than your sin. Your God is much bigger than your problem. So because you believe in a God who is strong and who is almighty and who is infinite, there is nothing too big for him that he can't handle. Bring your problems to God and don't despair. He will not leave you nor forsake you, Habaib. So as long as you take a look at the cross and you see Jesus there, loving you and dying for you, then you have nothing to be concerned about. So there's no reason for us to give in to despair.
Because we are coming to it. Okay.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, so my fourth question would be, what are some ways to get out of a box? And then my fifth question. Okay, my fifth question would be like, what if like the only way to have an opinion and not get discouraged for it would be to be in like solitary the whole time, and you're like hypothetically at like school or somewhere, and then you just don't talk too much people. What do you do in that situation, hypothetically?
I'm so sorry, the sound is cutting out and I couldn't make out what was said.
Abouna, he's asking if there is not enough people to agree with your opinion, what to do, like at school especially, like not enough people who shares the same values. So what he will do?
Yeah, however, don't wait until you have enough people to surround you. I mean, this is why we have a community. This is why we have a church, right? When we all believe in the same gospel, when we all believe in the same teachings of Christ, you're surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded. At school, you might not have many people, and that's okay. Because at school, we're surrounded by people who come from a diverse amount of backgrounds with different opinions and different faiths, and that's okay. God created us free, and people can choose freely to have whatever opinion that they want. But you don't have to wait until there are a lot of people around you. Because the honest to God truth is that if you believe in the truth, then the truth is what gives you strength. It's not the number of people around you. Because even if everybody else around you believes in a lie, why would you want to believe it just so you could fit in? Let's go back to my example of the Galabiyya. If everybody around you right now, in the chapel where you're sitting, if everyone around you right now believed my Galabiyya was pink, but you know it's black, why would you say it's pink? Just to make people happy. There's no reason for us to wait until there's a lot of people who believe the same thing. The most important thing is for you to recognize what the truth is and to tell God, Lord, give me the strength to be able to speak the truth in love in the way that you want me to. And the good news is because you have a church, because you have community, because you have a lot of Christian friends who surround you and believe the same thing as you, they will tell you, no, you were right. The Galabiyya is indeed black. It is not pink. I feel like you guys are going to leave today's meeting and the only thing you remember is that Abouna was wearing a pink Galabiyya.
Thank you, it's Abouna. Thank you very much for giving us the time. Thank you guys for the questions. Anybody have anything? We thank you, Abouna, and on behalf of Abouna Metias, he has confession, so he couldn't come. So we thank you very much for this opportunity. Happy Kiyak. Hope everything is good with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep me in your prayers, Habibi. Nice to see you all.
Nice.
Bye-bye.
You asked the same question like 7 times.
How do you feel about it?
Bro, I'm telling you, it's a he asked the question, what was the answer? And he's like, what was the answer? Repeats it again. Yeah, but what was the answer? He repeats it again. He's dumb. Yes. Also, being answered
One announcement. I want to announce about something. God will, December 30. يا حبيبي عشان ما بتشوفوش الايميلز and you don't look at anything on WhatsApp. God will, December 30th, we're going to have a day, a fun day together. It will start at church at 10 o'clock a.m. Okay? We're going to do prepare together some sandwiches for charity place. And then after we're going to have Christmas games and fun time for a couple of hours. And then we will head to Burlington for the Activate place. It's a very fun place. We booked limited spots. First in, first, what's Activate? Google it. It's a fun place. Actually, you Google everything, guys.
I was there this week, you guys don't want to miss it.
It's so good. It's so good. We have limited spots عشان الدرايفنج والنمبر of servers. So Whoever book first is in the trip. Okay? It's $30 each. You give it to your servant. Okay? So the day we're going to start at 10 o'clock, ending like our booking there is around 3 o'clock. So let's go back around 4:30 or 5 maximum. Okay?
I have a question.
Including lunch, yes. Saturday, December 30.
Okay.
It's in the Christmas break.
How much again?
$30.
Like right now.
If you wanna book your spot, yes. If you wanna book your spot, make a deposit. First in, first served, like served, or first saved the spot. Nobody say, oh, I didn't have a spot. Once it's booked, because we booked certain number of tickets there. Go
I have a
ahead.
question. What if we show up for the activities and then our friends can drive us instead of
Still, the driving is okay with the parents, but we need to book. You need to book the trip for the spot there. We booked tickets. So it's a game, a group game. Okay, so if you go by yourself, you will play by yourself. Okay, this is something personal. So if you want to do it yourself, it's up to you. But we are not together as a team or as a group. So we have from 10 till almost 4 or 5. Yes.
Oh, that's like the fun.
ماشي خلاص كده okay with the servant give $30 if you want to book your spot or a deposit to show that you are committed to the day.
Minimum $5.
Anything else you want to ask?
What is it that you can deposit and book a spot?
So if you don't have the full amount a day, like you don't have the full amount. You want to put $10? I'm serious. I want to book my spot. Okay? Okay. Anything you want to add? Anything? Okay. Can we play a list? Can we play? Sabah Warghan? Okay. I think that's better. Sabah Warghan. Okay. You also.
Are you the same quality?
Are you in the Sali of left?
Let's pray.
Okay, let's pray your list. Let's pray.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Our Lord Jesus Christ, thank you for this gathering today that we gather under your name and your empowerment. Thank you for teaching us today that we stand for what we believe in. We would ask you, our Lord, to give us the strength and the grace to stand firm in our faith and to reject any other things that are away from what you stand for. We ask you, our Lord, to forgive us all our sins. We ask you that you make us step closer to you, to protect us and to help us be really your sons and your daughters. Through the intercession of the Mother of God, Mary, Camina, your Father, the Apostles, and all the Spirit, make us worthy to say thankfully, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Through Christ Jesus our Lord,
So that you did maximum the coming Sunday you made, okay? Because that trip is like Sunday is the maximum. Yes, Okay. They should, yes. Okay. So Marina